Israel is working day and night to bankruptcy the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian National Authority, the Palestinian government. This is another war.
This would not be a temporary displacement. This is ethnic cleansing.
We, the Palestinians, is facing two empires, the dollar empires and the media empires.
The problem for the Palestinians, besides the genocide going on in Gaza, is that they really lack useful political leadership. Mahmoud Abbas has been president for far too long and is not very effective.
Hamas will not be going anywhere, even if we try to destroy them, or if we, in the sense I'm just referring to the Israelis, if they try to destroy Hamas, it's more of an ideological, presence that will continue to sustain.
Even the leftists in Israel, just 1 month ago, one of the polls saying about 86% of the Israelis is talking about expelling and killing the Palestinian whom Israel is invading their towns.
In this conflict, whether the Iranians are going to speak with the Americans because they would want to save some face, and at the same time the economy is not doing well at all inside Iran, that could also push the Iranians to some sort of an understanding that we might need to tone down even if we have quite a few resentments against the Israelis or the Americans.
Is this a war on Gaza petering out? Unlikely, as Israel continues to attack them with everything they've got. Or is this the Gaza endgame? Has the 60-day ceasefire plan and hostage swap plan hit a wall? Is this sticking point going to be the Israel plan of forced displacement of 550,000 Palestinians out of Gaza and to Rafah? Or will the Israeli forces agree to withdraw completely from Gaza as Hamas would like? The Hamas hostage release offer, is this also the last card in play? What happens to Hamas, already into its third leadership change? And where does this leave Iran, holding talks with once arch-rival Saudi Arabia, with Saudi Arabia too digging its heels in on any accord with Israel? Israel and Syria working together is a huge question mark. Hello everyone, I'm Neena Gopal. Welcome to Global Express, our weekly deep dive into events that impact our neighborhood. Do click on the new Indian Express and click and subscribe to the Global Express. Today, it's a Middle East in flux that grabs our attention, that throws up so many questions that have no answers. Is Israel remaking the Middle East? Is it rewriting the script for the region? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has already held 2 rounds of negotiations with the US President Donald Trump in Washington. But in a sign that the backroom negotiations between Hamas and Doha and Cairo may have hit a snag over several sticking points, particularly on whether Israel forces will withdraw from Gaza and what happens to Hamas, there has been no public announcement by either side. But Trump has said this: we're talking about Gaza, we have to get that solved, maybe this week, maybe next week. While Netanyahu has said on a video, we are determined to achieve all our objectives: the release of all our hostages, the living and the fallen, the elimination of Hamas's military and governing capabilities, ensuring Gaza will no longer pose a threat to Israel. But let's give a listen to the Palestinians too, starved of food and aid, some 55,000 of whom have lost their lives. Most of them are children, 15,000 of them are children. It enforced a total blockade of humanitarian deliveries in March, only easing it after a worldwide condemnation in May. Despite the death and destruction, the ordinary Palestinian is still saying, this is our land. And then, of course, there is Iran. Tehran's top diplomat, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, is in Saudi Arabia for the very first time since the 12-day war ended. What is that conversation about? Talking to us today is the respected Palestinian Ambassador to India, Abdullah Abu Shawesh, Ambassador Extraordinaire and Plenipotentiary of the State of Palestine to the Republic of India. He's served at the United Nations in New York and in Nigeria before this. He's from the famed Lund University and worked in Ramallah. Welcome, Ambassador.
you so much.
Also with us is Professor Rouzbeh Parsi. He's Adjunct Lecturer, Department of History at Lund University in Sweden. He has a PhD in Modern Iranian History and previously worked at the EU Institute for Security Studies in Paris and the Swedish Institute of International Affairs. Welcome, Professor Rouzbeh Parsi.
Thank you very much.
And Dr. Alvite Ningthoujam from Symbiosis School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, strategic researcher. He focuses on India, Middle East, and Israel, the geopolitics of the Middle East, and of course, international terrorism, particularly ISIS and Daesh. He has served in the National Security Council and the Prime Minister's office. Welcome, Dr. Ningthoujam.
Thank you, Neena.
So the Palestinian people are now reduced to getting food delivered at barely 3 points in Gaza by the US-backed group Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. It's not even barely enough. I mean, they've stopped baby food, there's no milk, there's no clean drinking water, there's hunger, clearly almost famine-like situation there. Shouldn't that be given precedence, Ambassador, top priority over everything else?
I thank you so much indeed for having me today. Very important meeting, of course, Zoom meeting. Indeed, before I start, of course, I would like to shed light on some, because your introduction is very important introduction. And I used to find myself all the time with a moral and legal and, of course, diplomatic responsibility to shed light or at least to criticize, so to speak, uh, some of the introductions, because you mentioned that is this a war on Gaza in your introduction? Yes, this is a war on the entire Palestinian people. This war was started November 2nd, 1917, when the United Kingdom, and I needless to remind you in India, what is the meaning of the United Kingdom at that time, 1917, issued the notorious despicable Balfour Declaration. This war was started long time ago. This war was continued when the Israeli or the Jewish gangs, Jewish military terrorist gang expelled and succeeded to expel and ethnically cleanse the vast majority of the Palestinian people, of whom, of course, my late father, Muhammad, who was expelled from our town, our original village, Berga, and he became a refugee in Gaza Strip, so that I born as a refugee in Gaza Strip. This war was continued when Israel occupied the remaining part of the historical land of Palestine in 1967. This war was extended and continued since that time. This war, this battle, this is not a war, this is a new battle that was started
Yes.
even long time before. And when you mentioned that this is as requested by Hamas to end the war, indeed, it's not only political, Palestinian political. Everyone, every single one worldwide, every decent human being worldwide is calling for the end of the genocide or the American-Israeli war on Gaza. So that when we should focus on, if in this case, with all due respect, of course, we did not want to follow the Zionist method of work or the Zionist school of thought when they are trying to focusing or to center or to corner only one political faction. Many points that you mentioned in your introduction. Unfortunately, I know that I did not want to consume all the time, but
I agree, Ambassador, but you have a point of view, we'd like to hear it.
yes, so that when it came to what's happening, I'm not pretty sure whether I will go to tackle exactly your question, but I want to shed light also for the very last point that you mentioned, as if the Palestinian people main issue is the humanitarian aid and all of this stuff, which is not true. Well, you cannot create this environmental killing environment, then you say that we want to save the people or to serve the people with this humanitarian aid. Let me just take you back 77 years ago when the United Nations issued the 181 resolution, or the part as it is called, the partition plan of Palestine, and after the Palestinian or the Jewish gangs, the terrorist gang was expelling the Palestinians, ethnically cleanse them. The Palestinian question itself, since 1949 till 1974, became a question of a humanitarian aid. And if you repeat, and I'm the son of the United Nations, and when you back to the resolutions or the UN resolutions, whether it is the ECOSOC resolution or the General Assembly resolution, all of it at that time since 1949 till 1947 was focusing on only one matter: how to support or finance the UNRWA, which is the UN entity that dealing with the Palestinian people. So that we should
That
put
is
the
correct,
issues
Ambassador. But
bad. It's a war on Gaza. It's a
yes,
U.S. American Israeli war on the Palestinian people. It's the same exact war that they are launching right now against the Palestinian Authority in West Bank. It's the same exact
yes,
war
I
that
actually
they
wanted to
are
bring in that too.
launching to the to bankruptcy the Palestinian Authority. Me in person, likewise, another 180,000 employee and retired Palestinians since 3 months. We only received, and this is the month we did not receive our salary for this month.
Oh my
But in
gosh.
the past 2 months, we received only 35% of our monthly salary. For the last 4 years, only 70%, 75% of our salary. Israel is working day and night to bankruptcy the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian National Authority, the Palestinian government. This is another war. They are working day and night to make our life in West Bank is more than miserable, so that the prices in West Bank now for the product, the regular product, is skyrocketing because the transportation is not guaranteed.
What
If you
about
want to,
Jerusalem, Ambassador? What about
I'm
Jerusalem?
coming. I'm coming, my distinguished sister. When I'm talking about occupied West Bank and how they are trying their ultimate best to dismantle and they are day and night declaring that they want to, of course, not only to occupy, to implement the Israeli law and expanding. We are talking about approximately 50 spot settlement, a new settlement, and illegal, which was all of it illegal, of course, was created just a few um, uh, since for the last 2 years. So that all of this is type of war. We cannot just measure the war by the American missiles, the American, of course, the American European missiles, which is hitting the Palestinian people. And by the way, there is a new statistics that was issued approximately 4 months ago. It's talking about Gaza was hit by approximately 80,000 tons of explosive material,
80,000 tons.
80,000 tons of explosive material, which means each person in Gaza, he shared or the shared or per capita, so to speak, in Gaza. I will going to use the economic vocabulary. The explosive material per capita on Gaza is 43.4 kilogram. This is 3 times as much as was 3 times much than what was used in the Second World War. When it came to Jerusalem, the situation is again very miserable, especially in the holy sites. You all know that the Israeli citizens, the Israeli current messianic fanatic government is day and night invading and discrediting the Al-Aqsa Mosque itself. And day and night, they are calling to demolish it to build what's so-called the third temple and all of this stuff. The people, and they are dismantling even the schools in the West and in East Jerusalem, UNRWA schools, and other private schools to make sure that the student just should have no other choice except to accept their curriculum and their schools. So that when we talk about the war, there is a different type of wars or different shape of the same exact war that launched against the Palestinian people 107 years ago, started by the United Kingdom. I thank you.
Yes. That we do know. But Ambassador, what is it then that you can look forward to? Is there any hope at all of some kind of settlement that will be, will give the Palestinian people a homeland? Because I mean, when there was Itzhak Rabin and Yehud Barak and with the PLO chairman Yasser Arafat, we were all living in hope that something would be, that there would be a settlement, and yet, that never came about. And the Palestinian Authority has also sort of, as you say, they've been undercut by Israel, as you rightly put, financially and otherwise. Now that they're being squeezed out of the West Bank, occupied West Bank, and now in Gaza, the same thing is being done to the Palestinian people who are being pushed and bombed and sort of moved to Rafah.
To South, yes. When it came to the hope, we the Palestinians did not lose the hope long time ago. We the Palestinians is facing two empires, the dollar empires and the the media empires. And needless to say that when we talk about the dollar empires and the media empires, and this is not anti-Semitic, I'm the one who is the Semitic person when we say that those two empires is to some extent is controlled, and this is not anti-Semitic, by the Zionists. This is very important. Since that time, with all with all the devastating situation that we used to face, we still have the hope. We still resist this occupation. We still resist this, so that the hope is there, and we will not lose it till there is an light by the end of the tunnel. This is how did Yasser Arafat teach us, and this is what the heritage that we will not lose it. When we talk about the homeland, Palestine, the entire Palestine, as it is explicitly called even in the Old Testament, as it is explicitly, but it is explicit name in the Torah, in the Genesis book, the first ever book, as it is explicit called by Canaan land, Canaan, Palestine, the Palestinian land, more than 1,200 times in the Old Testament, is our homeland. This is the point. But what are we seeking is to build our state, to embodiment of our state in only 22% of our historical land. This is how we sacrificed for the peace. So that when it came to the peace and to the sacrification and the homeland, or the state of land of the
What
state of
about
Palestine.
today, Ambassador? What about today's situation?
Yes, today we are talking about building or establishing the state of Palestine in only 22% of the historical land of Palestine. This was the hope. We were very close. We were very close in 1995 to
Yes.
implement this situation. But this current prime minister and two of his cabinet, those three persons whom is inciting against at that time Ishaq Rabin and assassinating him. They did not Al Amir who was assassinating, but it was a direct, as a result of the direct incitement by those three fanatic people, and of course the other fanatic. So
So,
that
Ambassador, if I can
we
just
were
ask you
very
one
close.
question, one very, very important question. Hamas is talking through Doha to Israel, and there is talk of the demands that Hamas has made, which is basically saying they want a withdrawal map from the Israeli military, so that they go back to the northern part of Gaza where they were originally, and in the southern part also, so that that whole area is then given back to the Palestinian people. But Israel, I mean, I believe this is the reason that there's no progress. Israel is saying that it will not allow that. It wants Hamas out of Gaza completely, and it wants the people of Gaza, the Palestinian people who live there, to move to Rafah. So, what do you think? Is there a middle path? Is there a middle way? Is there something that could bring about the 60-day ceasefire that the Palestinians need so desperately?
When it came to the issue of withdrawing of the Israeli occupation army, this is not only the the request by the Palestinian Party or Palestine. Every single one worldwide want Israel to withdraw and to back to the fence and not to the border because Israel did not have a border, recognized border according to them, not according to us. So the withdrawing, if you the not in, intention or you intended not to end this war, there is no mean for your existing as a Israeli occupation army inside Gaza Strip, especially after all of these demolition and destruction of Gaza. When it came to
Yes.
the we should not tackle one just political Palestinian political party. The resistance idea itself is not represented by one or two political. We, the Palestinian, resisting by all means the Israeli occupation. Not only everyone, every decent one is resisting by, of course, by many other means, resisting the Israeli occupation. It's very important to say that every decent one worldwide want Israel to withdraw outside the occupied,
But
the
Israel still says it wants control of the Philadelphia corridor.
I'm coming. Not only Philadelphia, two corridors, Philadelphia corridors and the other Mirage corridors. And they are trying, intending to build, and what did they call it? A
Hmm.
humanitarian city to expel the Palestinian to the city, which will be located directly on the border. Let us be very clear. Israel have one very clear goal behind this war is to expel the Palestinian people, not only from Gaza, but also from West Bank.
West
It
Bank.
is ultimate goal. Put aside all the others goals that they are calling for it, but by the end of the day, their main intention, which is the same exact, history is repeating itself. This was the main intention in 1948, and this was the main intention in 1967 till 1973. They tried their ultimate is to expel the Palestinians, especially in Gaza. Yesterday, it was very clear from Netanyahu when he said that if they want to stay, they can stay, but if they want, and we are working
Yes, he
with
said that. If they
many
want to
other
leave, they should
countries.
leave.
Yes, but you cannot accept the people or the people in Gaza cannot. You cannot destroy every single mean of their life. Then you tell them you are free to stay or to leave. This is another very important and very significant pillar in this regard. Just 3 months ago, May 15, the Palestinian Bureau, Statistical Bureau issued a statistical figure saying about in the occasion of 77 anniversary of Nakba, the catastrophe
Yeah.
1948, they issued I mean the Palestinian Statistical Bureau issued a figure talking about the Palestinian and the Israeli or the Jewish between the river to the sea. It became equal in number with all the killing of the Palestinian, with all the policies and the measures that Israel is taking it to reduce the numbering of the Palestinians. And this is a demographic threat. And yesterday, just again, Netanyahu said it clearly, whether they should be there, but they should not being a threat to Israel. Israel considering our birth giving a birth, any woman giving a birth in Palestine, this is a threat, and this is the same exact policy that they are trying to impose it by, and they call it ending finalizing the job. They believe that Ben Gurion in 1948, he did not finish the job because he did not expel the entire Palestinian to the no, south of, I mean, to the
Sinai, you
west,
would say.
yes, to Jordan and behind the river, so that and to completely empty Palestine from the Palestinian people, so that they want to finish the job, and this is the declared goal for them. Put aside all the others issue, Israel is one of the first, one of the fifth, one of the 10 military, one of the six, I'm sorry, one of the six military power worldwide. Israel will have the most sophisticated air force after the United States of America. Israel is a nuclear power. So that when it came to Gaza, what's happening for 642 days is not fighting against a Palestinian political faction, is destruction of Gaza, is making the life in Gaza impossible, not more than that. Israel is knowing, and this is what did they used to say. Israel had the opportunity to release all its hostages and our hostages since the very first day of without war, without war at all. But they choose to have the war. They choose till today. They choose to have the war, the destruction of Gaza, dismantling of everything, just to make Gaza unlivable on the day after the war.
So basically, Ambassador, what you're saying is that this peace formula that they're talking about, where Hamas agrees to release the 10 hostages and maybe another 10 hostages next week in return for a 60-day ceasefire, is not even going to take off, basically because Israel is bent on, not giving a homeland, not even giving the Gaza Strip, or even a truncated West Bank to the Palestinian people.
Every single day of war on Gaza, Israeli-American war in Gaza for Israel, they are preparing more gains, killing more Palestinians. In a daily average, they used to kill 100 to 120 Palestinians. This is a daily average. In a daily average, they used to destroy tens, if not hundreds, I mean hundreds of homes and civilian facilities in Gaza. So that even if they know that according to the Israeli media, Israel with its surveillance, intelligence surveillance, knowing that where is their hostages located in Gaza, so that they are avoid attacking it. They are attacking just uh, uh, the civilian people, the civilian infrastructure, and all of this. No, I think we are within the next, according to the very last news that came from Doha and others, we are very close. It might take 2 weeks, but for Israel, if it even took another 1 2 months, it means nothing. It's a credit for Israel because they will kill more Palestinian, they will dismembering more Palestinian, they will create more orphans, more widows among the Palestinian members, and this you know that it will not. This effect will not be ended by the next day of the war. Some of these effects will extend it with us for the upcoming 80 to 90 or maybe 100 years from now forward. So that Israel is gaining a lot from this war. Israel is not paying the price because the American and many European countries paying for this war. And this is not a secret at all when I say that American and just yesterday, the American, just yesterday, ships is coming with D9 and all of the destruction, big machinery is coming from the United States of America, and the European part of the European country is paying for this war. So that, but if there is an and I will not going to use the ceasefire because if you allow me, ceasefire mean that there are two armies is fighting against each other, which is not the case. This is the U.S. American, Israeli, and many other Western countries fighting against 2.1. We did not become 2.1 million. It's fighting against 365 square kilometer. Vast majority of it right now is under the Israeli total occupation. It's completely uh, 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 evicted from the Palestinian people, so that we are talking about approximately 40% of the 365. The whole entire, the vast, most vicious military weapons is dropping and killing and fighting in this very tiny area. Uh,
Thank you very much, Ambassador. That was very interesting, insights into where this so-called peace talks, which we thought would reach fruition this week, and is now looking as if it will get extended, for even longer, while the Palestinians pay a huge price in this war on
It's not,
Gaza.
if you allow me, it's not a huge price. We are my family there. I'm sorry to say that. My Abu Shawesh family is there. We born in a refugee camp in Gaza. My family is there. And when it came to the Gazan people, you cannot ask me or anyone from Gaza whether he lost some of his relatives. The question should be how many of your
Mm.
relative you lost for every single Palestinian living in Gaza. So
Yes,
that we
yes. No,
are paying from our.
I lived and worked in the Gulf, so I did have many Palestinian colleagues who suffered during the Nakba. You know, I mean, there's a colleague of mine whose mother still had the keys to her house in Ramallah.
And I have the keys. I'm sorry that I did not bring my personal, my official key, my very old key. It is in my room there in my residency. But we still the Palestinian, and this will take me to the issue of the hope. We the Palestinian, when you ask my child, whom born in Ramallah in West Bank, from you, where you are, where she gonna will not tell you that he's from Gaza or West Bank. He gonna tell you I'm from Barga and we have our village.
Well,
This is the
we can wish you the best, Ambassador. Hopefully, there will be some hope to look forward to in the future of a homeland for the Palestinians, and that you get to go back to your home using your cane. Thank you, Ambassador. I really
thank you
appreciate you
so
coming
much.
on the show,
Thank you so much.
and get better soon.
Thank you.
I'd like to open the questions to our other guests. We've got two very interesting Middle East experts, Iran experts. You know, the 60-day ceasefire isn't the only track that America is taking that is being talked about. I mean, there is now also talk about a parallel conversation that is going on between Iran and Saudi Arabia, Professor Rouzbeh. So, would you like to take us down that path? I mean, what is it that Trump hopes to achieve with these two tracks, the Palestinian track and the Iran track? What is behind it?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I mean, I think to some degree, he doesn't know himself. I think what he wants to do is to extract himself from the Middle East. And that is, in essence, what his electorate chose him for. And the problem for him is that he keeps getting dragged in to the Middle East again, like many of his predecessors in that office. And he has, in a sense, put himself in there by the way he has not dealt with Gaza and not dealt with the conflict between Israel and Iran. So in that sense, he became a party to the whole thing, not just someone who was responsible by inaction. And now he wants, it seems, to negotiate again. The Iranians obviously need to negotiate with him. The
Why
problem
would they
is that
need to do that?
well, they need to negotiate with him because they need to figure out some kind of baseline for how bad the conflict with Israel can get. And more importantly, what are the trigger points for American participation again? Because it's rather likely that there will be more war between Israel and Iran. And the question is, what role will the United States play in that? Will it try and stop it? Will it just look on? Or will it actually actively participate like it did very briefly in the 12-day war that we had recently? And so for the Iranians, it's important to try and see if they can reach some kind of agreement with him, with the United States, in order to alleviate that pressure.
No, that is, you mean to prevent another round of bombing and warfare with Israel and the United States coming in big time and damaging their nuclear facilities. That is what they want to prevent?
I think it would be optimistic to think, or it would be a very optimistic scenario, that Iran, through negotiations with the United States, would be able to get the Israelis to back off. But more important for them is to make sure that the Americans don't get involved again.
Yes,
So that's,
because
in a
they
sense,
have
the
the
minimum.
firepower.
Yes. So the minimum, if you will, the minimum is to get an accord with the United States to avoid a war between the United States and Iran. The maximum would be some kind of accord that would also get the Israelis off their back.
If I can come to you, Dr. Ningthoujam, you know, there is also the whole issue of the Palestinians being pushed out of Gaza into Rafah, and you know this reordering of this Middle East, in the sense the way that Israel would like it to be, has seen a very interesting collusion that has happened with the way that Israel has broken the Hezbollah in Lebanon. It has, done the same thing to run Bashar al-Assad out of Syria and brought in, ISIS man called Ahmad al-Sharaa into Syria, and I mean the Houthis seem to be the only ones who seem to be getting not facing the not I mean the Israelis haven't been able to get to them. Do you see this reordering of the Middle East? As a possibility, because has Iran actually suffered? Has it actually been sort of, you know, uh, become a little less powerful than it was to begin with?
Thank you, Neena, and to Ambassador and my other panelists, Mr. Parsi, for very insightful deliberations, particularly in the form of introductory remarks about what's happening in the Middle East right now. When it comes to the regional dynamics and particularly looking at the Iranian position, I would not be hesitant in saying that it has come under lots of pressure, particularly given the fact that some of the ardent supporters of what they believe in, say the so-called axis of resistance, and some of the big supporters like Bashar al-Assad, right, on the doorsteps of Israel, and at the same time the elimination of Hassan Nasrallah um,
Yes.
has have proved to be quite a setback for the Iranian leadership, particularly under the guidance of the supreme leader, the theocratic regime's head. Uh, because these are some of the actors who also have been believing in what the Iranians are doing in terms of fighting or putting up some sort of a resistance against the Israeli might in the region. But if we have seen in the last 1.5 years period, I think you and I had this discussion sometime last year
Yes, that's right.
about the first round of military confrontation between Israel and Iran, sometime in the month of April and October last year, and at the same time followed by the third round of conflict, which has become a lot more severe, the 12-day conflict, which we just saw
Yes.
a week and a half back. I think the elimination of the leaders who are very good in planning, and at the same time the reach outs or the intelligence as well as the military reach and the capabilities of the Israelis vis-a-vis the Iranians, to an extent, I would say, put the Iranian regime under some sort of a pressure. That again, of course, is a very setback for the Palestinians, who also need some sort of a support from the outside world or from the immediate territories of Gaza Strip or West Bank. But when it comes to the Iranian angle, it is, of course, and my predecessor also spoke about what are we, exactly looking at in this conflict, whether the Iranians are going to speak with the Americans because they would want to save some face, and at the same time, the economy is not doing well at all inside Iran. That could also push the Iranians to some sort of an understanding that we might need to tone down, even if we have quite a few resentments against the Israelis or the Americans. And as Ambassador also mentioned, as Mr. Parsi also mentioned, the American policy is pretty dicey. It's still premature to say what Donald Trump is going to really, will in the region. That would be a big message for the regional countries in the Middle East, be it for Israel or be it for any of the Gulf countries.
Which is what fascinates me at this moment. Why is it that the countries in the region, like Egypt and like Jordan, and countries that actually drove the peace process, in the early days in the 90s, why is it that they are holding back, so to speak? I mean, there is this proposal, this which they're calling, the genocide in Gaza, and the move to displace the Palestinians from Gaza to move them to the southern tip. 550,000 Palestinians will lose their homes, have already lost their homes. I mean, why is it that nobody steps up? Why is it that Cairo and Amman and countries of that kind don't step up? I mean, it is now left to Saudi Arabia, which is refusing to sign the Abraham Accords as the Emirates has done and Bahrain has done. And it's Saudi Arabia which is now pushing for a homeland. Why? What drives Saudi Arabia to come into the picture like that? I'm wondering,
Nina, is that
Professor.
for me or is that for the
No,
other.
no, it's to you, Dr. Ningthoujam.
Right. I think, firstly, the changing demographies of this region, particularly along the Jordanian side and the Egyptian side, could be one of the factors. How much would they be able to take in, the refugees from Gaza Strip or from the West Bank? We have seen that during the Donald Trump's first administration, also when he
But
spoke
Donald
about.
Trump said this just 2 days ago. He said the countries in the region are willing to take Palestinians. So is there going to be a forced, is he referring to Cairo or is he referring to,
That again,
say,
if we look at the history, the recent history, we have seen lots of rebukes coming from the Jordanian king about it. We also have seen, like you mentioned, that the reluctance of the Egyptian leadership to even accommodate some of the refugees in this crisis, and that in itself speaks a lot about. It's, to me, it's very dicey, and to me, it's very confusing. What these countries are really up to. But for me, I think it's more about the demographic composition that could really alter the situations on either sides of what we call now as Israel. That could be one of the reasons. But the Saudis, of course, they have put on hold with their normalization plan with Israelis because, uh, coming back to a little bit of this regional dynamics, many of these normalization processes which we had seen in the last 4.5, 5 years period, were got to do with the ruling elites and the Israeli, leadership and the American leadership. A larger sentiment of the public is still very much with the Palestinians, and we would not like to see another resentments or protests inside the kingdom or in any other monarchical regimes, because they are really on the part of economic reforms, socio-economic reforms, for which they would like to get the support of the public. So, particularly for Saudi Arabia, bring in the religious factor or the Islamic factor, they would not want to really disturb the equilibrium right now. So they have to be really mindful about the political
yeah,
diplomatic steps that they would like to take vis-a-vis Israel.
I get that. Professor Parsi, if you could come in on that. I mean, does this peace which they're talking about, will it come at a huge price for the Palestinians? Because I mean, if they're going to talk about displacing all these the Palestinians out of Gaza and the West Bank, what happens to Hamas, for example? Without Iranian backing, Hamas doesn't have the same kind of bite that it did uh, in the past.
That's true, but I think let me just go back to the point of unwillingness from Egypt and Jordan and other countries. I mean, we
Yes,
also have to remember that Jordan is a country with a very bad economic situation that has already taken on millions of Syrian refugees. So this is not a country that is, doing well on its own as it is. So that's one factor, and that goes partly for Egypt as well. But there is another factor that is also important, both ideologically and politically. That is that this would not be a temporary displacement. This is ethnic cleansing, which means that Gaza will be not inhabited by Palestinians for the foreseeable future. So this is both from a kind of international law perspective totally unacceptable, but also politically, domestically for these countries, what they would be acquiescing to is basically helping Israel outsource its problem, as it were, with having to live with Palestinians. So instead of Israel dealing with the political issue of having to come to some kind of accommodation with the Palestinians, they're basically just forcing them out and forcing the other neighboring countries to take on these populations permanently. So on the one hand, it would be socioeconomically very difficult for them. On the other hand, politically, what it would mean is that it's an indefensible position vis-a-vis their own populations, that you're basically helping the Israelis ethnically cleanse Gaza. So for
very
all
good
of those
point.
reasons, I really don't see why any one of them would volunteer. And then comes the third factor, which is that any way that this would be feasible, just practically feasible, which I don't think it is, but even if it were, it would be based on having some kind of economic and political backing from the United States. And what we've seen with Donald Trump is that he's very, very unreliable. So if you were to stick out your neck, as it were, in this sense, what are your guarantees, if any at all, that you will get any kind of backing from the Americans for it?
I just wanted to ask the next question, which is basically, should the Palestinians leadership, step in and up the ante by offering an alternative? I mean, this is what they did when Egypt and Israel were looking at in the 90s, looking at the Palestinian homeland in the 90s, the Arafat-Yitzhak-Rabin Accord. But should the Palestinian Authority step in and make a bigger noise, so to speak? Because right now, we don't hear anything except the plight of the Palestinians. We don't hear about a political alternative.
No, that is a very accurate observation. I think that the problem for the Palestinians, besides the genocide going on in Gaza, is that they really lack useful political leadership. The Palestinian Authority is rather corrupt and not particularly popular among the Palestinians to begin with. Mahmoud Abbas has been president for far too long and is not very effective as such. So there is, in a sense, a lack of political leadership that can step up as far as Ramallah is concerned. And as far as Hamas is concerned, well, you can say that Hamas is probably not very popular either, because they brought this on the population of Gaza. But this is the inherent, if you will, diabolical dynamics of occupation. Hamas fulfilled a political function, being the party of resistance. So even if Hamas is eradicated tomorrow and the occupation remains as the basic foundation for the relationship between the Israelis and the Palestinians, someone will have to invent Hamas. There will be something else that looks like Hamas in terms of being willing to focus and mobilize for resistance, including armed resistance. Is it going to be useful? Is it going to be constructive? Not necessarily, but that is what occupations do. They create and foment an enormous political frustration and hatred in the population that's being occupied. And that will need some kind of outlet.
Okay, so that is a very interesting point that you're making, that if there's there could be another reinvention of Hamas in the future, which will basically be the only way that the Palestinians can fight for, for whatever they want. But, there is also Netanyahu's case, in the sense that within his government and outside, there is a lot of support for this war to end. Is that the incentive that is driving, another incentive that is driving Netanyahu towards finding an end to this war? I mean, is that one of the reasons?
I'm not so sure that he wants to end this war. I think he wants to have temporary breaks in the war because he needs to replenish all that ordnance and ammunition that he's using. And he needs to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't stray away from his more or less unquestionable support. But I don't think, for the dynamics of his own government, that he would want to end this war. I mean, his coalition exists based on the fact that crucial parts of it want this war. They want the ethnic cleansing. They want the genocide. And other parts of it very much spoil for a war with Iran. So for a lot of reasons in the column for keeping the war going one way or another, and not that many reasons in terms of Israeli internal politics for ending it. There is a huge popular unwillingness to continue this war, correct. But there is also a large constituency within that electorate who supports the parties who are in government who want this war. So that is not a clear cut, that there is an overwhelming majority that want to end it or want to end it on no particular conditions. So what Netanyahu does is that he strings out and draws out these supposed negotiations, backtracking his own position whenever it suits him because it might look like a resolution. And that's exactly what he doesn't want at this point.
Ambassador, if I could just bring you in for a minute. Is Netanyahu feeling pressure from, anybody else other than the ordinary Israeli? There are ordinary Israelis who do want the war to end in Gaza. Is that something that gives you a little sense of hope, that there is a section of Israelis who do not see the same eye to eye as with Netanyahu in the right wing?
Indeed, this is not Israel that we witnessed it in 1982 during the war in Lebanon, when hundreds of thousands went on the street to stop the war in Lebanon. This is not Israel with its leftist wing that still have a taste of sense of humanity towards the Palestinian people. Even the leftists in Israel, just 1 month ago, one of the polls saying about 86% of the Israelis is talking about expelling and killing the Palestinian whom Israel is invading their towns. Part of them, more than 60% of them, is a leftist people. So that this is not Israel that the public opinion is kind of pressure. The only pressure is coming because there is still some hostage in Gaza. If the hostages is released and back to their home, and Netanyahu decided to continue the war, he will face zero pressure from his society. Not only that, his society will supporting him. Just to tell you that 3 days ago in one of the Israeli street, some of the decent Israeli, we did not say that completely they are not decent, approximately less than 10 persons whom is demonstrating carrying the Palestinian children, photos demonstrating against the war in Gaza. This is not Israel that was demonstrating and stopping the war in Lebanon in 1982. So that Netanyahu did not facing any single pressure to stop the war. Just the pressure is to bring back, to stop the war for one condition is to bring back the hostages, but not the war for the sake of stop the bloodshed and killing of the
Yeah.
Palestinians. And this is something very dangerous, even when the hostages will be back. And I hope that they will be back long time ago, not only today, long time ago. Likewise, another 10,500 Palestinian hostages, 76 of them was killed and assassinated in the Israeli jail since only October 7, 2023. I hope that all of the hostages, the Palestinian and the Israelis, to back home. But once it will happen, I trust that likewise, as my distinguished brother Parsi said, that Netanyahu is not intended, Israel in general, not only Netanyahu, Israel in general is not intended and not intention to end the war.
Dr. Ningthoujam, if I could come to you, I mean, there are opinion polls in Israel which give conflicting opinions on what Netanyahu should and should not be doing. But does Netanyahu have the ability to get what he wants, which is disarm Gaza, destroy Hamas militarily, and how does that impact the region if Hamas is also taken out of the picture, just like Hezbollah and the Tehrik al-Sham, or I forgot the name of that Syrian army. What is the larger repercussion in the region, you think?
See, Neena, we already have seen Hamas battered in terms of their military capabilities. So probably some of the remnants, are the ones who are trying to sketch up a fight against the Israeli military might. But to one of your questions earlier, to my earlier predecessors, Hamas will not be going anywhere, even if we try to destroy them, or if we, in the sense I'm just referring to the Israelis, if they try to destroy Hamas, it's more of an ideological, presence that will continue to sustain what Hamas has believed in, regardless of their defeat, which they have faced from the Israeli military operations for the last couple of years. The wider implications, of course, we have seen that in the Middle East in the last 4 to 5 or 5 to 6 years, some sort of a normalcy, perceived normalcy, was coming back to the region, particularly with the defeat, again, the territorial and the logistical defeat of ISIS. Everybody was under the impression that Middle East was returning to normalcy, because we have measured that normalcy in terms of Israel's acceptance in the Arab world, particularly in the Sunni countries, say, the normalization process in the form of Abraham Accords. But people have failed to see that the unresolved Israeli-Palestinian conflict will continue to determine the safety and stability of the region. And we have
That's a
seen
good
that
point.
after the October 7, I'm not indicating October 7 as the only starting point of this conflict. The ambassador himself has given a very good account of the historicity of this conflict. But there seems to be a widely held opinion that Middle East was returning to normalcy, and we kind of kept the Israeli-Palestinian issue or the topic at the backseat. But then the October 27, October 23, the attack kind of a resurfaced and brought a reminder to everybody that this is one major issue which needs to be resolved or given some attention. And Hamas, of course, has been successful in doing that, in bringing back the issue back on the table. So the wider
That's a
implication,
very good point.
yeah, the wider implications is that, how are, for me, what is more, again, apart from notwithstanding the importance of resolving this long-standing crisis between the two sides, we are also, it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of policies are going to be wielded or thought over by the larger West Asian countries, particularly looking at the conflict that we just saw for that 12th day. The very severe military confrontation between two regional powers in terms of their military capabilities. Also, we have seen that Israel does not longer remain invincible. They have also been tested by the Iranian military might, and how the other West Asian countries, particularly the Gulf countries, are going to react to this in the long term. So that takes me back to recalibration of their policy. Who are they going to believe, keep their trust upon? Is it going to be the Americans? Is it going to be any other extra-regional players like Russia, China, in terms of their security guarantees? So it's going to be a lot more of a introspection, which the leaders will have to give a
Yeah.
thought over.
Ambassador, if you need to leave, you can go ahead. Thank you very much for being part of the show. You have
Or
any concluding remarks to make?
yes, no, no, not to concluding, but just uh, to thank you, of course, dear Nina, and of course, all the distinguished brother, Professor Aliviti and Mr. Percy, for having me today. Indeed, it's a very important discussion. I hope that we can convene again and continue the discussion. My office will reach out to you, of course, to have my distinguished brother here number so that we can continue in
Of course.
communicating with my office. With that, thank you so much. I should leave. It's five,
Thank
and
you,
I should leave.
Ambassador. We're really
Thank
grateful.
you so much indeed. Have a good day.
Thank you. So if I could look at the bigger regional picture, we now have two very big players in the Gulf. We have Saudi Arabia and we have Qatar. It's not really, I mean, these are the two countries that could actually play the role of, stopping Israel from, uh, could they play the role of Israel becoming, a major force in the Middle East? Because Israel has now cut Iran, to a great extent. It's basically limited Iran's ability to basically counter Israel or collar Israel, so to speak. So, what do you see the role of Saudi Arabia, Dr. Parsi, Professor Parsi? Where do you see Saudi Arabia going? Because I see it as taking the place of what it's reclaiming its old space of being the leader in the Gulf countries.
No, absolutely. And that is its ambition. I just don't think necessarily that the fight between Iran and Israel is red in a very clear-cut fashion when it comes to the Gulf and elsewhere. So put it very simply, the Israelis will win a hot and quick war. What the Iranians have on their side is longevity. So if they are not destroyed or beaten in a very quick fashion, they can try and bank on the fact of being 10 times as many people as Israel, and a country that is 1.6 million square kilometers big. So they are more into a long war of attrition where Israel will have to extend and expend its resources. So put it very simply, Israel has air supremacy, is vastly superior when it comes to military technology. But if Iran manages to shut down Tel Aviv's airport, every other day, that means there is no more tourism industry in Israel. So those are the different, if you will, clocks by which they are acting. And what the Saudis are seeing is that Iran is a headache and has been a headache for decades for them. But they are no longer as volatile and unpredictable. That characteristic is actually Israel's. It's Israel that is now upending whatever we knew about where the borders of the countries were and what was more or less acceptable or allowed. And there seems to be no end to it, in the sense that the only country in the world that one would think would be able to put a brake on Israeli ambitions or adventures is the United States, and the United States is either absent or actually encouraging.
But it's also reaching out to Iran through the back door.
It is, but the problem with the American reaching out is that they were reaching out at the same time that they knew that the Israelis were going to attack. And they were formally still reaching out at the same point that they were bombing Iran themselves. Now, that seems illogical to most of us. It's not illogical to someone like Donald Trump, because that's the way he negotiates. He's pulling the rug under your feet while he's negotiating.
There's also a buzz, as you said, of these backroom talks with Iran and Saudi Arabia in another country.
Yes, there are, and we can only hope that they will reach some kind of positive and constructive solution. But what I see as the structural deficiency on the American side is this lack of institutional predictability. So that that the negotiator has a mandate, and that mandate is still there when he goes home. And so whatever he said in the negotiation room is still valid when he gets home. If you can't do that, then there is no real negotiation going on. And so I think that's the problem right now. No one really knows what the Americans want and whether their negotiators are able of actually achieving it once they've decided what they want.
So you're basically saying there's a huge lack of trust on what America could do, even though the negotiations are on between Hamas and Israel, and between Iran and the Americans.
Absolutely, because let's remember that the nuclear agreement between Iran and the 5 permanent members of the Security Council in Germany in 2015, the JCPOA, it took 1 year of preliminary negotiations for a preliminary agreement, and then it took almost another year to reach that. And that first, the joint plan of action, which was before the JCPOA, was basically a long series of small steps where everyone could corroborate and verify that the other side did what they promised to do. What we're talking about now is not going back to square one. We're at square minus 10. And as far as we know, they have not yet decided on any kind of procedure through which that trust can be rebuilt.
That's very interesting. Dr. Ningthoujam, if I could just end with you. India too has to ensure that it doesn't alienate either Israel, because we have shared objectives, we have shared goals, it's a major defense partner. And given we have this two-front war looming on our borders with China and Pakistan, we can't afford to alienate either Israel or Iran, because it's not just our shared ancestry and our heritage with Iran, it's also our investment in the Chabahar port. Can you explain the Indo-Israel dynamic for us and the India-Iran dynamic?
I think the conflict has come at a very crucial juncture for Indian foreign policy vis-a-vis West Asia. And this is no longer, I'm just talking about now India and the larger Gulf and the wider West Asian region, including Israel and Iran. If we look at the trajectory of India's foreign policy, we have seen a remarkable transformation in our bilateral relationships with almost all the countries in the region, and particularly with Israel, of course, and then with the Gulf countries. And Iran has been one country with whom we have a very uneven sort of a relationship since the early 2000s, particularly when we start moving closer to the Americans and the Israelis for defense partnerships, as well as for the civilian nuclear agreements that we have begun to sign, that we have begun to engage with the Americans from 2005-6 onwards. But the more we see a very turmoil violence in the region, it is going to put India in a very difficult position, particularly looking at the geostrategic importance of a country like Iran, which is very important for our accessibility towards the Central Asian and the European the corridor, and at the same time our investments in Iran for this Shahid Beheshti port. And at the same time, the relationship with Israel has become a lot more comprehensive than before. We no longer concentrate on only upgrading our defense partnership, but we are, cooperating with the Israelis on multiple fronts, be it water, agriculture, startups, artificial intelligence. The economic cooperation are on the rise. And FTA is under negotiation. So this also indicates that we have come a long way. But this kind of a conflict, which we keep seeing from time to time, and India not being able to, say completely stand by Israelis or the Iranians at some point in time in the future could complicate the policy. Because we have seen the Israelis, say, for instance, during our operations against the terrorists inside Pakistan, we have seen a lot of support coming in from different countries in the regions, including Israel. But we everything has a lifespan. We cannot continue saying that we are watching this region, and diplomacy and dialogue. So at some point in time, if this sort of animosity and the rivalry escalates into this sort of a scale, it is going to be a lot more problematic. But it clearly shows that Middle East, whatever that happens in the Middle East, could have a wide-ranging implications for India in terms of our economic security, energy security, while we are diversifying our own economic partnerships and at the same time the energy and gas sources. The region constitutes a huge portion of our share in terms of our economic and energy trade. So and of course the changing profile of the working manpower. It's no longer unskilled, but we have begun to see a good number of skilled workforce getting into the Middle East. So all of this have to be taken into consideration, and at some point in time, these countries might want India to take a stand. So
yes, I was going to ask Professor Parsi this. I mean, Iran's moderate president, Masoud Pezeshkian, did tell the U.S. Journalist Tucker Carlson that Iran had no problem, resuming talks as long as there was trust. Is there a lack of a trust factor between Iran and India, you think? I mean, because Pezeshkian is a new player in the game. But Abbas Araghchi was the intelligence chief for a very long time, so I'm sure he knows India better than most.
I don't think that the kind of lack of trust that Iran has with the United States is comparable to any kind of minor variation that it might have with other countries. I mean, the Iranian and Indian relationship, and obviously goes back millennia. And I think India is one of those countries that Iran has a kind of basic respect for, being a very important country in Asia and in the world. So I don't think that the Iranian relationship with India suffers from those kind of problems. That being said, it's also important to remember that in international relations, there are very seldom friends of any kind. Friendship is not an issue. What you have at best alliances, more or less temporary, more or less permanent. So I think shared interests. So I think in the Iranian case, no one has any illusions that India or China or anyone else is going to come and bat for you when you are, confronting states. And I think in that sense, the Iranians ought to know that they are in a sense partly in as bad shape as they were in the 1980s when they had just had a revolution and alienated everyone. So they do have shared interests with people. They do have potential allies, but obviously none of them are going to or rather sacrifice their own self-interest, which is partly the relationship they have themselves with the United States, on the altar of helping Iran. So on that, the Iranians are on their own. They have to deal with it.
What do you see happening in the next couple of weeks, Professor Parsi? And if you can join in after that, Dr. Ningthoujam, just give me an idea of what we can expect in the coming weeks.
Well, in the coming weeks, if we are lucky, the Americans and the Iranians do talk. And if the Americans are being realistic about what they can achieve in terms of what they can extract from Iran, then we might see something that looks like the beginning of a better deal, which is what Trump definitely needs to call it to be able to justify why he ruined the previous one. And whether that succeeds is partly about what the Iranians want, the Americans want, but also about how much the Israelis can sabotage it. I think when it comes to the Gulf, they are very much for it because they know that any kind of deal would stabilize the situation. When you look at the Europeans, I'm not as sure. Because for the Europeans, I think there are two other things that are very important for them. One is that whatever this deal is, it very strictly regulates Iran's nuclear program.
Do you believe?
Or
Do you
that
see? Do you see Benjamin Netanyahu, sort of not able to pull this through and personally pay a price, in Israel itself?
well, Benjamin Netanyahu would probably prefer to have no deal at all because no deal gives him free hands. So that's his option, number one. But whether the Europeans, for instance, would agree to a deal depends on what it looks like and also to what extent the Russians are involved. Because for the Europeans, the Ukraine war is paramount. So therefore, anything that looks like normalization of Russia's position is something that they would prefer to avoid.
That's very interesting.
What they are underestimating is, of course, what a new, renewed war with Israel, between Iran and Israel, would entail, and the cost for everyone, including Europe.
Dr. Ningthoujam, do you have a concluding remark for me on what's your crystal ball showing?
I would second what Professor Parsi just mentioned about the nuclear likelihood of a nuclear deal or some sort of an understanding between the Americans and the Iranians, and that could, of course, put some pressure on the Israeli sides, and the Israelis would. What kind of a deal would they, want is also a big question. Under what conditions would the Israelis be satisfied that this is one deal that we will be happy with? That remains to be seen in the near future. Another, apart from that, the ceasefire which you just mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, on what ground would the ceasefire be agreed upon, and what would be Israel's position in that agreement? I mentioned this in some of my other forums also, that Israel has got a very good chance to continue with its influence, rule over the Gaza Strip, the project, the Eretz Israel project. So I don't see Israelis giving up land inside Gaza Strip, and that could be a stumbling block in the ceasefire. But apart from that, whatever that goes behind the scenes between the negotiators and the two warring parties, that is something which I cannot tell. But the Middle East will continue to be in this sort of an uncertainty for some time to come.
That's very interesting. So there's definitely going to be a reordering of the Middle East, and there will be a change possibly in the world order. But whether Israel will actually be able to redraw the maps, it did succeed by shattering the Shia arc, so to speak, across the Middle East. What happens to the Palestinians? What happens to the settlers? What happens to Donald Trump's, so-called madman theory, which is in play? Because with his unpredictability, his inconsistency, his self-contradictory remarks, it does unsettle the countries that he deals with, but he could also end up changing the world. How will he change the Middle East? Because given Israel's push to put Iran back in the box, nuclear Iran back in the box is going to be interesting to see whether it will be able to keep the Palestinians whether the Palestinians will be able to keep the sliver of territory and call it a Palestinian homeland, either in Gaza, outside, we don't know. But the unpredictability doctrine is, I think, more than evident now in the Middle East. How it plays out, how the Gaza endgame plays out, is all going to be, watched by all of us, I think. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for coming on the show. Thank you, Professor Rouzbeh Parsi. Very interesting insights. And thank you, Dr. Ningthoujam. It was really interesting to hear your views as well. Our viewers, do click on the Global Express icon on the new Indian Express website and subscribe. Thank you very much, everyone.